Congress is closer to another round of pandemic relief after a late-night vote in the Senate on Thursday. More money flowing out will mean more oversight to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, and data will be a key piece of that oversight. Brian Miller is Special Inspector General for Pandemic Recovery. Brian, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program today. How is your office using data for its work?
Francis, first of all, it's very nice to be on the program. Thank you for inviting me. Good to talk with you once again. And we are using data. We're scrubbing all sorts of data sets, and we have a great team of analysts and auditors and investigators that are scrubbing data endlessly. In our last report, we referred to 69 referrals where we've scrubbed the data, various data sets of all the data being collected on CARES Act programs. And we've found 69 cases where we suspect that there is fraud. There are people misusing the CARES Act money and potentially committing criminal acts, or at least misusing it, and should pay the money back.
You and I have seen any number of inspectors general, special inspectors general over the years in Washington. SIGPR was a big one during the recovery in 2008, 2009. How is the work that you're doing structurally and mission-wise different than and similar to the work of some of these other inspectors general?
A great question, Francis. Special Inspector General is kind of parachuted in to a federal agency. And remember, the agency already has an inspector general. And so we're parachuted in and with a very limited budget and a limited mission. My limited mission is to look at CARES Act programs. And so we're looking at that limited mission with and trying to accomplish that within an agency that already has an inspector general. In the case of the Department of the Treasury, it already has the IG for the Treasury. It has the SIGPR is still there. We have the Tax Administration IG. And so we have a number of other special IGs in the agency. And so I have to do my job in coordination with them and in coordination with other IGs. And I'm working very closely with other IGs and with the Pandemic Relief Accountability Commission. It is a committee of other IGs, and then the Congressional Oversight Commission, and I call it the trifecta of oversight, because with a global pandemic, that's an unprecedented challenge in and of itself, requires unprecedented solutions, and the Congress worked on an unprecedented solution in the CARES Act, but that requires unprecedented oversight. And so they created what I call the trifecta: the Congressional Oversight Commission, the Pandemic Relief Accountability Commission, we call it the PRAC, and the Special IG for Pandemic Recovery, which is my office. And so we're trying to account for all the monies going out under the CARES Act. And I know that many Americans are focused on their health and the health of their loved ones. And with this pandemic, there's a lot of challenges, but I want them to know that at the Special IG for Pandemic Recovery, we are focusing on catching the bad guys that are taking advantage of this money in these programs and trying to make sure that their hard-earned dollars are going to actually relieve Americans that are in trouble by this pandemic.
The chair of the PRAC, Michael Horowitz, will join us in just a few moments to talk about his work. You wrote recently in a quarterly report to Congress, Brian, SIGPR necessarily spent much of its nascent stage navigating the challenges of standing up an office in the midst of a pandemic. But our early efforts have borne fruit. What's the fruit that you see so far in the work that you've done?
Well, first of all, Francis, we are building the airplane as we're flying it, and not just flying it, but flying it through an unprecedented storm, that storm being the global pandemic. And so we're trying to build an office out of scratch, out of nothing, and that takes a lot of work. We have all sorts of challenges in hiring, establishing email, establishing computer security, and IT security. And not only that, but also renting space, hiring people. There are all sorts of challenges. And in a pandemic, everything is harder because people are working from home. And so it takes a longer time. Nevertheless, we are seeing results. We are coming through, as I mentioned before, data sets, databases. We are developing leads. We are working with U.S. attorneys. I have memoranda of understanding with over 10 U.S. attorneys. We have AUSA, assistant U.S. attorneys assigned to our cases, and we're working in conjunction. We're working with the assistant U.S. attorneys to develop potential criminal cases. And so all that takes a lot of time, but we are seeing results. We are getting our cases accepted in the U.S. Attorney's Office, accepted for prosecution, and developing all these leads, which we give to our partners, our other IGs and other law enforcement partners. So as I mentioned in the report, we have 69 referrals, and so we are actually producing a lot of good results for this short amount of time that we've been in existence, especially when you take into account how long it takes to get up and running. And I could regale you with stories about all the difficulties, but I know we're short on time, and I did talk about some of them in our quarterly reports, especially about the length of time just to hire a retired senior executive into the government, which should have taken a week, ended up taking a month, and difficulties in hiring law enforcement agents and that sort of thing. But they're all documented in our quarterly reports on SIGPR.gov.
Brian, I look forward to having you come back and talk about some of those challenges and how you're dealing with them. Brian Miller, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Francis.